Roger Goodell has decided he's going to hear the appeal, and we've now heard from the other side, I don't know whether you've heard this latest news, that the defense, if you call it that, Tom Brady and his attorneys, are going to call Roger Goodell as a witness.
Yeah.
So how can you be judge and witness, and he's going to be the jury too? This reminds me of Judge Roy Bean, who was a Texas judge back
right.
in the 1800s, and Paul Newman played him in a movie. I don't know whether you or anybody else here has ever heard of that, but is this a good idea? Does it make any sense to you that Roger Goodell doesn't go out and get an independent arbitrator?
Well, they've had this policy. They have this issue, Woody, with the personal conduct policy, where Goodell has played judge and jury. Now it's the first time where it's involving an on-field issue. But yeah, it's the joke was, so if Goodell if he's supervising this, is he going to hold up his right hand as the judge and then his left hand as the witness? I mean, it's just ripe with conflict of interest. But if he turns it over to Harold Henderson, nobody has any faith that he will change Goodell's decision. And in reading it today and talking to a few NFL sources, the reason Goodell's going to, at least for now, doing it is because he's hired to take bullets for owners, Woody. Let's be honest. He's not hired. They say he generates revenue. This league generates revenue on its own. I mean, that's not the commissioner's role. One of his biggest roles is to handle crisis, which he's done poorly, and keep crisis from showing up at the doorstep of owners. So he's going to have to be out front, but this is going to end up in federal court if it's anything like Adrian Peterson. Harold Henderson's ruling soon on Greg Hardy, which I'm sure he'll keep the ruling, and then that's going to end up in federal court. It's a bad look for the NFL. This is your NFL, Woody. Al Davis, all over again.
It is. I mean, Robert Kraft, who was the closest associate among the
right.
owners to Roger Goodell, and even showed up at parties with him in the Super Bowl after this controversy came about, that Robert Kraft is sort of channeling Al Davis, where he's claiming that they'll take action against the NFL. And I read the Wells report, and I hate footnotes. And if it's important, it's either doesn't belong in the report or it belongs in the report,
right.
not as a footnote. I will say this about the counter report, if you will, the rebuttal from the Patriots is they only had one footnote at the end, so I was more excited about that. But that was one of the funniest documents. It was boring, long and boring, like both of them were. It was like I read War and then Peace.
Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. At least those are more interesting.
Man. But I think how they defended Tom Brady when talking about needles and deflator, it sounded like a cartoon in the Sunday comic strips. Deflator, because he wants to lose weight. I've never heard that expression. You and I have tried to lose weight before. We never said, I think I'm going to deflate myself. Give me a needle.
It reminds me of the controversy with Wayne Hagan when he said that when he referred to juice, he meant creatine. And it was like, everybody says that. It's juice, it means creatine. Or nobody says that. Yeah, who loses weight? It's like that show on NBC, The Big Deflator. Oh, yeah, I've seen it. No one's seen Who says it? It would be funny if they weren't trying to be so serious. I mean, that's the thing. This was written 20,000 words, Woody, in seriousness, that this was their opinion that in their defense of Tom Brady. I give them credit. They're all in. It's just... You wonder. I know other executives I've talked to, they do feel like the punishment was too harsh because everyone knows where bodies are buried, knows they have skeletons in their closets, so they weren't real happy with the heavy-handed nature. But Woody, this defense, I mean, you've covered the NFL for 40 years. Yeah. Is there a more comical defense that you've ever seen that's been put forward as a straight defense? I mean, Al Davis was funny in a way that he just loved confrontation, but he usually won. He just raked millions from the NFL in winning lawsuits over moving to L.A. and moving back. This is just, it's hard to take seriously from afar. Outside of anyone in New England, do they believe in this defense?
Just as a footnote, if we get to the Al Davis, one of the reasons why he did a lot of this is how much he hated Pat Bowlen. When Pat Bowlen came along, they had, and this is before your time covering it, but Pat Bowlen hated Al Davis and was a leader in sort of trying to push Al to the side and everything. And Al would say, I'm going to get even with Pat Bowlen. And he accused the Broncos of cheating. He said, And when the Broncos were fined almost $1 million, Al Davis was to the forefront of that saying, hello.
I've been telling you this.
Yeah, you talk about me all the time because they
Right.
were, when I first started covering the NFL, there was all the talk that there'd be microphones in the
Right.
visitors' locker room, and a coach would look up and say, hey, Al, we're getting ready to have our speech. And then they'd turn up loud music and gather all the players around in a circle. So it is as comical almost as that in terms of reading that, where they said, oh, they were using humor and exaggeration and sarcasm. And I said on Around the Horn the other day, well, I'm the go-to person on all of that. Humor
This is
and
my wheelhouse.
Yeah, you come into that. I saw, and I haven't seen this debated, that ESPN survey is being used. They contacted 504 people either by email or phone, and they were talking about how many people believe that are, quote, real sports fans, kind of how it was overwhelming that, yeah, he should be penalized. But the one that got me is 61%, only 61% said he belonged in the Hall of Fame. And that struck me as funny. If you have ever paid any attention to football, this is not PEDs.
No.
This is not keeping Barry Bonds or Sammy Sosa or Mark McGwire out of the Hall of Fame. This is a matter that took place that involved a little bit of cheating. I would say that, a little bit of cheating over a long period of time. That's what I think that it's really about Tom Brady's hands aren't. I hope when they have the appeal that they have him hold up his hands, kind of an OJ. It's a football don't fit. You can't convict. But really, I think that might be that he didn't have. His hands weren't comfortable around the football, and I think to this day, and I'd like your response to this, I think to this day, he had a bunch of balls, and he said, this is the one that I want. I want it to feel just like this. So I think he's somewhat telling the truth that he may not have known, although he said after a game, before a game, be sure and show the referees that you can have it down to 11.5 PSI. But that defense where there was a gas level defense, there's a employees must wash their hands before leaving the restroom defense, that it does take you 1 minute and 40 seconds to pee and then wash your hands and clean up the sink and the toilet, and that's what's followed up.
He was in there for its intended use. Everything about McNally alone is just right for a 30-minute comedy show. Just McNally alone.
Okay.
It's amazing.
This NFL update was sponsored by Fantasy Sports Combine. This is a new sponsor of ours, and you want to listen closely. And you'll listen to this. You're a fantasy player, aren't you?
My kids are. I don't anymore, but yeah.
Yeah, because your son bets like $1 or something. He's probably breaking the school rules.
I'm not sure about that. Let's leave that on the down.
Leave me out of this. The Fantasy Sports Combine is the ultimate experience for serious fantasy sports fans. And it's coming this summer. It's kind of like Comic-Con, I think.
Oh, is it?
It's
Okay.
coming this summer to Wynn Hotel in Las Vegas, July 17th through the 19th. Join the likes of Adam Schefter, former Denver Post writer, Matthew Berry, who is the fantasy expert for ESPN, Brandon Marshall, late of the Denver Broncos and the Miami Dolphins and the Chicago Bears, Mike Shanahan and Mike Ditka, and many more to help you get an edge in fantasy sports. I'm not so sure about Mike Ditka helping you. Get your tickets today at fantasysportscombine.com.